thank you and welcome everyone. Apologies for the technology glitches we're having. We're excited to have you all join us for a great conversation. The topic today is navigating career transitions in the midst of economic uncertainty. And I think this week has brought us even more interesting data as we continue to see technology companies make announcements. But the great news is we have these two ladies here today to give us some positive insights around things to look positively towards trends that they're seeing in the market. So welcome to SIM Women. And while we talk about this really quickly, I got a little off my cadence here. SIM Women is or SIM in general is a organization, Society of Information Managers, and it's really about developing the next leadership level in IT. SIM Women is an augment to that. And what we're trying to do with this particular lunch series is really stimulate a conversation around kind of the how and the what, not the why related to diversity and inclusion. And that goes across a number of different categories to include topics like this, which is we're walking into some high inflation, and though unemployment seems to stay low, right? What are we really dealing with here? So our two panelists today, if I can get the slide to move forward, is our Louisa Waldman, who's here from the Senior Regional Director. She's local here in Portland with Robert Half, and she has really navigated an amazing career. And I'm going to let her speak a little bit about herself here in a minute. And the Diedre Diamond, who also has navigated an amazing career in talent sourcing, but focused in the cybersecurity world. So Louisa, do you mind sharing a little bit of your insight in regards to this conversation and related to your background?
Sure. No dad jokes. I'm like Diedre. I can't ever remember. I always laugh at them and think that's great. So I am Louisa Waldman. I am based in Portland and have been in the Northwest for the last 15 years. I'm a regional director with Robert Half Talent Solutions, and I oversee our Oregon, Idaho, and Washington territories. And Robert Half is specialized in accounting, finance, technology, administrative, customer service, HR, and legal placement. We do contract, we do consulting, and then we also do direct hire placement. As far as my career with Robert Half, I have been in the staffing industry in some capacity for the last 25 years, and going on 24 years with Robert Half, and have worked for Robert Half in a multitude of ways, working in different groups, and then also across the nation, mostly East and West Coast. Here's my joke: I don't like the middle of the country. That's just how it's kind of worked out. So excited to be here today, and hopefully I can share some good information with you about what's really going on out there and what we're seeing.
Thanks, Louisa. Diedre?
Yeah, it's great to be with you all. My name is Diedre Diamond. It's a hard one, so don't worry about it. But I am the founder and CEO of CyberSN. We're 8 years in business. We're the largest solely focused cybersecurity talent firm. And we are changing how people find jobs and get matched to jobs. It's a broken, yucky system. So we're all about the matching piece. Never mind delivering old-fashioned services at 51. Doing this a long time. And I'm also the founder of SecureDiversity.org, which is a not-for-profit that has for the last 5 years been bringing women into cybersecurity, supporting women in advancing their careers in cybersecurity with the Day of Security conference. Last 4 conferences have had over 1,100 women. And now we've launched a partnership with SANS, where we're taking women that have experience in cybersecurity and funding and putting them through executive cohorts for cloud security, GRC, and SOC executive roles. So if you're interested, please join Secure Diversity and hear more about that.
Thank you, Diedre. We're going to go ahead and kick off with some statistics, right? Because we've heard a lot of kind of doom and gloom, and what we really want to do is take the fear out of what's happening out there, and also empower you with some tooling, as well as these experts to give you insights. So if you wouldn't mind, Pradeep, if you could pull up the next slide, that'd be great. So, and I will just start with the fact that the top fact, right, which is how we started this out, is the fact that in technology, which I think most of the women here are affiliated to technology, right? We're about 40% of what's seeing out there. So it's 1.5% in unemployment. Ladies, if there's an update since I pulled that, let me know. But 1.5% in the technology sector versus 3.5% across all industries in that unemployment. It is an offset, though. Women are definitely impacted at a higher rate than men. Also, I thought this is great. Louisa provided us some kind of industry standards. And we are talking about, the salaries are trending up, which is not what you would necessarily think. So 46% of employers are offering higher starting salaries. And that's also impacting those of us that are staying put. So the nice part is if they're making pay adjustments for new hires, they're also seeing those employees who are basically still there also receiving increases. Louisa, do you want to make any comments related to the statistics versus me reading some of these?
Sure. Yeah, I think, so Robert Half's a global company. We do a lot of research, both locally, nationally, globally. We also have independent companies that do surveys for us. So I will definitely provide a lot of additional information after this that you can check out on your own. We have a blog, lots of blogs that are about hiring and also job searching. And, if you are looking for a new position, what should you be considering as far as that goes? But in our surveys, we are finding that, and we're seeing it because we probably work with around 2,000 companies in my market. And people are offering more, they have to in order to attract. I would also just add that the reason why that is because it's still a candidate market right now, at least in my world, that's what we're seeing. So that comes from the candidates driving the salaries going up and, managers needing to increase it. And then also to Sasha's point, just the retention is big, right? So if I've been with my company for 24 years. And, if that can be great, but it can also be, if you're not paying attention, right, you can find yourself maybe not being paid fairly in your role. And so that's why I think arming yourself with data is really important. And we offer a salary guide for all of the areas I mentioned earlier. And there's an online tool that I can send out to all of you to check it out. What are you worth? Are you being paid what you're worth? So I would just add that, and then also just, people being underpaid, also what people want in the market. And that's also changing. So flexibility. I don't know if you guys have all heard out there, everybody wants a remote job and doesn't ever want to leave their house anymore. So that's kind of like an interesting thing that we can talk about too, is just, what is out there. And maybe on the technology side, there are more remote offerings, but in other areas of organizations, there's still a lot of companies that just want people on site. They want to watch you work. So I would just add that as well.
Yeah, Louisa, you bring up a really good point. So one of the things, our last speaker that we had, Mandy, who's the VP of cybersecurity for Kohler, one of the things she said when she went into negotiating for her job is she had a whole list of things that were important and in the ranking, right? And salary was one of those. But then she's like, if you can't meet this, here's where, right, you can make this package look better. So you're bringing up a good point, which is people do want to work remotely. There's other benefits that they're seeking other than just money that they're willing to make considerations for.
Yeah, and those are valuable. They could be very valuable, right? Not just the commute, the salary, but I think, work-life balance or, all of those things. I think we're also seeing time off, cost of benefits. I would say 4 weeks vacation it's kind of expected these days. It's no longer just, it used to be, oh my gosh, there's 4 weeks vacation. Now we're really seeing people they have an expectation of that. So that's also part of the total package that people can look at.
Clearly I'm older because I did not know that. I'm still thinking it's 2 weeks.
Yep.
Diedre, we have a whole bunch of statistics that you basically mentioned, right, related to cyber. And so that's your area of expertise. Do you want to give us some insights around what are you seeing in the marketplace, and then maybe give some context to some of the stats that we put down here?
Yeah, absolutely. To the point of money, nobody's leaving because of money necessarily. When people make job changes, they expect raises. And so that's why we keep seeing these uptick, never mind the shortage in skilled people. So we don't see that going away. We see that continuing, so much so that we have salary data in our career center per functional job role. It's updated every 90 days. That's how often we're seeing this change. And not only do we want professionals to know this, we want employers to know this, because the number one challenge we have in cybersecurity is once somebody does find somebody they want to hire, usually their budgets are too low. And so we want to work that out prior. That's how fast it's moving. And there is a massive shortage, as you can see here in the stats. As it pertains to the economic shift that we've just had, there was minimal layoffs. That doesn't mean that it was minimal impact for those people. It's always, not a pleasant experience. And yet if they have experience, they're finding jobs. It's a broken job searching system. As we all know, it's antiquated. It's been around forever. It's one of my passions is disrupting it, meaning that job descriptions mean nothing and resumes can be whatever. And somehow the match between the resume and the job description is supposed to be effective, and it's not effective. And it causes a lot of problems and churn. And so that all is still there. And when somebody's laid off, to have to enter into that in a stressed zone, that's terrible. Definitely, as I see here in the chat, the first calls I got from people being laid off, me personally, were women. And I noticed it was the first 4. And much as I'm the founder of Secure Diversity, the business is men. So that says a lot right there. I saw on here 30% of cybersecurity workforce is women. My stats are still much lower, and we have a lot of stats on that internally. And so, women were affected more. Continue to see that in all industries whenever there's economic downturns. It's ridiculous. And yet the more we can shine the light on it, the more we can do something about it. Overall, anybody that has skills, highly sought after, it's a candidate's market, like Louisa said, and job searching is a broken, yucky system. So it doesn't mean that it makes it easy to find what you're looking for.
And that is true. In fact, one of the things that we talked about originally was related to like job descriptions and these application processes. We're going to get into, maybe we'll make a quick shift here. We're going to talk about what are some of those effective practices for folks that are looking right now.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to them that they think about, because we know it's broken. And I know, Diedre, this is why you started your platform, right? Was to basically shift that specifically in cyber, but.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we know the stats say that as women, we don't respond unless we think we know we're qualified for the job. And that is a fact, and we know it. And even once we know it, it doesn't mean that our subconscious mind doesn't take over when we're searching and say, don't respond to that. And so one of my biggest problems with job descriptions in general is that they're really not job descriptions. A job description is not, I want 4 years of this, 2 years of this, 3 years. That's not a job description. A job description says, here's the tasks and projects I want this person to complete. And this is the portion of their day that I think 35% of it is to this, 25% is to this. I mean, with that kind of conversation, retention is higher, job satisfaction is higher. These job descriptions are not job descriptions. So not only are they hurting women in that they're ridiculous in terms of I want this, I want this, I want this, and not the job description, it's also hurting everybody in that that's not a job description. That doesn't help people self-select themselves through the noise of all the posted jobs.
Thank you. Yeah. Louisa, do you have any thoughts or comments related to that?
I would, I think what Diedre said is perfect. It is, people look at a resume and they look at a job description and they try to match those up. I think, a lot of people get hired based on relationships, based on conversations, and based on network. And so, I think that's just a tip that I would throw out there too, is your personal brand in many cases is going to get you the conversation, not necessarily sending a resume to a job that's posted. And so, I think just what is your personal brand? How are you managing that? Continuously updating things on LinkedIn and updating your network and your connections and staying in touch with those people as well, I think is part of this whole job searching and relationship based, world that we live in. And so you get a new certification, make sure you put it on your LinkedIn profile. Recruiters are always looking on LinkedIn for candidates, and whether you're open to work or not, but it's a little bit off topic, but on topic as well. So I just think personal brand is critical, and also your network and keeping it fresh. It should be a breathing relationship, not just something that you reach out to like, I haven't talked to you in 6 years. How can you help me now? So, just make sure that you're joining a group like this. Also important, supplementing what you're doing at work with the relationships and the networks that you have can help when you are looking at a transition or looking for a new opportunity.
Yeah, you have a statistic down here that I think is for whether you're hiring or retaining, right, or you're looking at being the candidate, right? I think the fact that 41% of workers surveyed would consider changing for 10%. That's something I think for anyone who has a team to keep in mind, right? Super important to make sure that you have an open dialogue with your team members to make sure that even if you can't meet that salary, there might be other things that you can do that creates benefits for them.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that really quick, Sasha. If we do have leaders on the phone, we recommend doing a stay interview. So it's not an annual performance review, but that's actually been really successful for a lot of the companies that we work with. And I do it with my people as well. So, asking tough questions. What would cause you to leave? Like, what is it that you like about your job here? What is it that you don't like? But obviously you have to be open to that feedback and taking action on what you can take action on, which to your point may not be a salary increase, but there is value in other areas of someone's, how you're elevating them, how you're developing them. It's important though, don't put your head in the sand because then you'll get resignations. So, and everyone is being recruited. Everyone is being contacted. Again, they may sell you something that's not great, but I think everybody's out there looking and they're all reaching out to anybody that they can to try to fill their open positions.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that. Retention has to be a strategy. And over the years, it just breaks my heart. I work for the same two serial entrepreneurial men for 21 years across 3 different companies. My current company, at 8 years in, I have all the first hires, never mind lots of tenure in the company. And I watched the marketplace just, turn over people, and it breaks my heart. And so in the beginning, I saw it was always, and it always is, about career development. Most in career development, or how somebody treats somebody just verbally, interactions, the EQ dynamics. But when it's a lot of it is career, even within that. And so what I've seen over the years is that there hasn't been the budgets in cybersecurity for training and development of people. Now we have the budgets for training and developing people, which is the #1 retention tool we have. And yet the time isn't there. So for us, we now have a service called Retention as a Service, where we keep people in their career training program and moving them forward, because I'm watching my clients for years have the desire, but either not having the time or not having the expertise to be able to career guide somebody across 45 different functional roles in cybersecurity. How could they have that expertise, right? So it is a lot to be a manager. It's the care of people, and our managers need help. It's not, and gone are the days that human resources really have those people dedicated to every function to help them. And so, for me, I was like, okay, well, I got to do it, because it breaks my heart, and because it's a really valuable service. And yet, again, nobody leaves because of money. And I hardly ever see it. We hardly ever see it. When it comes down to money, are they going to leave for nothing, or a lateral, or probably not? There's risk in it. Why would you really do that? You're not desperate. You're looking for a good home. That being said, I think retention is a big topic.
And it's not given enough time.
No, or skills or support. It's just changing. A big retailer client of mine just saw my first chief information security officer to have a human resources person put on their team, and their team's 24 people, and put on their team as a project manager, PMI certified. So they're literally bringing value in project management, but they're also human resources to be there to constantly, help the health of the team. And I was just like, yes, finally. And so more of that, right? More of that.
So I think that might, Lisa, do you want to make a comment on it? Otherwise, I'm going to transition to something else. Okay.
No,
so
I'm good.
You're giving me a good transition, Diedre, right? Which is around the fact that culture, leadership, right? I mean, these are usually why people leave versus money. how does somebody know that they should start thinking about a consideration, so that they're taking more of a proactive versus a reactive stance? What we don't want is people being shocked.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people, don't work somewhere that people don't care for you. If they're not interested in caring for you, get out and get out as fast as possible. It's not going to change if it's not already there. It's not your job to teach the organization how to care for people and how to be kind and be interested in your development and be engaging you in that capacity. If it's not happening, you're not going to most likely change it from happening. So to me, that's a number one thing. And before you get there is the time to not get there. And that's hard to do without experience. Wisdom, teaches us all that. We take a job that doesn't have it or a couple, and all of a sudden we're starting to ask better questions and things like that. But really the name of the game is, what's the program for me? And if that isn't defined before even the interviewing starts, well, probably not a place that has it together enough to really nurture somebody. And I would not take employment there. And we won't work with a client that doesn't have that in place. We'll work with them to make that in place before we start the search. What's the story? What's the program? Where's this job going to? What's the career path? Not just what's the job. And so as professionals and individuals, which is why our slogan is pwn your career and cyber pwn own your career. Let's not rely on the employers to just do, somehow get it done. Let's go work where it's already at. And we have that power. We are very sought after individuals. You all are. And so you do have that power.
Louisa, how about for you? What are some of the key indicators that it's time to really start considering or preparing for a transition?
I think it's always a good idea, if you can, to ask for what you need and what you want. And then that obviously is a really good indicator of whether or not it's going to happen. I do think we all have to be responsible for our own outcomes. And so it's not just the employer's responsibility to develop you. I think a lot of the development that I do and with my team is outside of the company. What else is out there for you? And there's a lot of programs that you can do outside of what your employer is just offering in terms of like your EQ or your leadership development, or just becoming more of a holistic approach. And so I do agree. I think if it's not there, it's not likely going to happen. I think sometimes it depends on is it a new manager? Is it a company culture? It's not likely going to change with one person, but I think you should always be prepared. So, that's where, to bring it back to, your brand, your resume, your certifications, like your network, just if you have good relationships and good connections, then, if you decide you're going to leave, it's not going to be a shock to you. One of our blogs talks about just career mapping, and when you are going to make a transition, making sure that none of us hop in our car if we're going somewhere without a plan. We used to, pull out a map. Remember the old days, right? Pulling out a paper map. But you put it in your phone or in your nav system if you're going somewhere. So I would just encourage that too, is really be thinking, what's it going to take if you're going to go find a new position? And also doing, we kind of have a 5-step tip of, or five things that you can do, if you will. And it's like, number one, decide where you're going. What job do you want? And then what are the directions, right? So how are you going to get there? And that can come with like self-awareness and self-reflection. And then also, who's going to help you get there? So like, who are your mentors? Who are the people either internally within your organization or externally that can give you some real feedback? And then, what are your mile markers? So along the way, it's not like you're going to swallow the whole whale. So I would just, and then lastly, it's, celebrating those wins and then, getting to the finish line. But I just think and also writing it out. I have a saying that I love, and it's hope is not a plan. So you talk to people and they're like, I want to do this, or I hope to do this. Well, that's not actually a plan. That's a thought. And so a plan needs to be thought out, written down, executed, sometimes told to someone else so they can hold you accountable to it or help you. So those are some things that I would just add to that part of this part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, well said. I would say that one of the challenges I see and this is exactly what people need to be doing, Louisa. One of the challenges we see is that understanding where one's career could go. Where do you get that knowledge? How do I know what is possible for me? I mean, we saw that so much that's why we made the Career Center to say, here's the feeder role. You go from this role to that role to that role, so know that, to me, it's really hard. How do you make those decisions without having that already mapped out? So a lot of research, a lot of finding the data, what are the typical career paths for the role that you're in now, but also if you don't want the typical, how could you get over there? It's a lot of data and research. And so the more organizations like us and can make this data available, it's easier to make decisions. And yet it's really hard to see that, especially new in careers.
Yeah, well, it's time consuming, right? What I've experienced is in a couple of my transitions, it went from like 2 to 3 interviews to 7, right? So, I mean, you just even look at the hours invested, and then you look at the process and the questions. And to your point, Diedre, the system's broken, right? I mean, as someone who spends a lot of time hiring people, I'm like, you're not asking me the right questions. And then, of course, as mature adults, you start changing the conversation, right? Because you're like, this is not leading to where we both figure out if this is a match.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for me how time consuming the process has come. And I don't think that the hiring is getting any better, is my personal opinion. But
no, it's getting worse. I mean, the digital era has made job postings so cheap, and that's the thing for everybody to understand. Back in the early 90s, when I got in the business, posting a job was $5,000 in the Sunday paper. It was this big, and that was it. And nobody's going to find that Sunday paper a week from now or 2 weeks from now or anything else. And so jobs didn't get posted until they were really open, which is a big problem we have right now in the industry, particularly public companies that have to post their job before they can do hire who they already know they want to hire, which wastes everybody's time posting the job and responding. And then the worst part of it all is that job description is now the basis of the conversation that is held to figure out if it's a good match. And it's just, killing us.
So that brings up a good point, right? Which is, I think the AI tools and the way that applications are sorted or resumes. I mean, to your point, every job I've ever gotten is through a relationship, right? Well, let's say somebody doesn't feel they have those. What advice would you give them in today's world, right? To start having conversations with the people that would most likely be a fit. Like, how do they figure out who those organizations are? And then how do they get past some of this filtering that happens with the tooling?
Yeah. Well, so the answer is a lot of things, right? One is that you're still going to have to work the boards, because they do work in 20 and 25% of the time. And so working the boards, it means applying to jobs, and how that works is applicant tracking systems very different from company to company, but 25% of the time it will work itself out. And so you got to do that. You got to do the networking. When you're applying to jobs, go onto LinkedIn, see who's in leadership and what could be that job's leader, and message those people and let them know that you sent your resume down to human resources, because at the end of the day, a lot of the managers are frustrated with the service of human resources, and unfairly or fair, doesn't matter. It's just a reality. And so you don't want to be just in one, just going down to HR, because it's possible that is dysfunctional and your resume never makes it to the hiring manager. It's very, very possible that happens.
Probably highly possible.
Highly possible. So reach out to those hiring managers, engage them, know what you want for yourself. I tell people all the time, don't alter your resume for a job description, because what did I just say about job descriptions? They're not anything special. They're worthless in terms of how much it costs to post them nowadays. And so they have little value because of that. Not that right or wrong. So don't change your resume. Make your resume about the tasks and the projects you've completed. If you're in cyber, you can do it for free at my website, and speak to those things that you've done, and then answer a question with a question. To your point, Sasha, you don't have time. Not only is this time consuming, it's time that we're doing behind our employers' back because of the way our systems work. We can't typically tell our employers, our teammates. It's a terrible place to be. So the least amount of time in that spot is what I want everybody to be. And therefore ask questions. answer a question and ask a question. You figure out if the job is good for you versus just being interviewed, waiting for them to say yay or nay. And then the way they say nay, we think it's us. And the reality is, if we really got that job description out of them and answered a question with a question, we would probably already say, I'm not interested in this job. So for instance, you ask me a question and then I answer it. And then I say, so tell me a little bit about a little bit more about your job. I see X, Y, and Z on the job description. Is that the majority of the job? What percentage of time is that, a task or a project you see this person working on? Like, ask the questions. Don't leave yourself to them to decide if you're qualified. You decide and show them. So be interested and interesting, answer a question with a question, figure out that job and figure out if you're interested while making yourself eligible to get it.
Thank you.
Super easy.
Louis,
Yeah.
anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, Robert Half or not, a lot of the, I think Deirdre's right, like, HR has a function, but a lot of the, work with an employment, the staffing company, a lot of the relationships that we have, Robert Half and others as well, are with direct hiring managers. And, we're maybe working through HR, but we have again, what percentage of the time is this person going to be doing that? What percentage of the time are they going to be doing this? Like, what are the daily functions of a job? And many hiring managers work directly with recruiters to find talent. And oftentimes your resume doesn't even get sent, because our job is to represent you, not just what's on your resume, but that's why you interview with a recruiting company. That's why you talk to them. That's why they talk to you. Our job is to sell you and to know the culture of the company, and also to know you. And so, I would highly recommend, working with an employment agency, a staffing company specialized in technology, or, whatever it is that you're looking for. Again, Robert Half or others. There's lots of really good companies out there that can help you. And we do charge a fee, so it doesn't pass along to you, but it is passed along to the employer. And what they pay us for is to save them time and money, and not waste your time, not waste their time, and making a good match for them. So and oftentimes, again, your resume isn't even sent until you sit down to have an interview with them. So it's not the resume itself presenting every great thing about you. And so I would encourage that too, build that relationship. And also recruiters can tell you about supply and demand. What are you really worth in the market? What's realistic? I met with somebody, I think it was 2 weeks ago, who was being underpaid by $6 an hour. And I know that's, she's pretty entry level, but when she came to me, I was like, wow, you should be asking for $27 an hour for your skill set. And she was, making, I think 19 in one job and then 21 in her last position. And she was an hourly employee, so, a little bit different, but I felt really good about that. Like, hey, and also I gave her the advice too, like, go apply. If you see something you're interested in, even if you don't match every single qualification, apply. That's what again, a man would do. So put yourself out there and go apply if it's a job that you're interested in and you meet some of the qualifications. They may also be looking to coach and train somebody, and not just look for somebody that has everything that's on the job description. So
especially in the job market, right? I mean, it's been a pretty competitive job market. People aren't necessarily getting their ideal candidates.
Yeah, and I think companies are more open. Again, I can't speak specifically to cybersecurity. I imagine that there's some very specific requirements there, but in many cases, companies are more willing to bring somebody in. And, if they've got aptitude, if they've got attitude, and they've got some of the skills to develop that person into what that company wants. And companies all have strategies that they aren't sharing with the market about where they're going, or maybe they're trying to upskill their department, or somebody could be leaving, that, moving on or relocating, or whatever the case may be. I just think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that an applicant wouldn't know about just by seeing job description. And it could be a really great opportunity to get a lot of skills and training that maybe somebody doesn't actually have.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned aptitudes. I think a lot of times, coming from a sales background, you're used to positioning, right? And so I don't know that everybody on this call, especially if they come from technology, understands what that looks like. How do you position yourself? How do you highlight your aptitudes, right? And your experience in the right fashion? Maybe give your thoughts or insight on that topic.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Diedre kind of talked about like research and data. So, I talked a little bit earlier about the career mapping and really, understanding yourself and the self-awareness. And so there's a lot of things that a lot of people bring to the table that aren't necessarily highlighted, if you will, on a resume, because maybe they're personal things that they do. They could be a board member on a, in an organization like this, for instance, that could show maybe some leadership where maybe they don't have leadership in their current role. And so I think that's where, mentorship, or, working with somebody, talking to somebody about what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go, and they can help you frame what that looks like. And so there's a lot of skills that people bring to a job that aren't highlighted in their actual job experience. Whether it's taking on something, again, like a professional networking organization, or, things that they do in their private life, that can be very, I think that can be very valuable to employers. And so I think people aren't comfortable always talking about themselves and how great they are. But that's
specifically women.
Yeah, but the positive affirmations are like, what are you really good at? I mean, of course, in an interview, they always ask you, give me an example of, whatever, right? Give me an example of a time where you did whatever, but start to log those things down, right? If you've done things that are great, have a list of those things that you can rattle off to somebody about, like, why should they hire you?
Mm-hmm.
Not just what they see on a resume or, that's pulled out by AI, but, what is it about you as an individual that makes you unique and special? And what can you bring to the table? And then what do you expect from them to give you as well? Because I think it does go both ways. So I think it starts with a plan, starts with, asking people around you, like, what do you admire most about me? And documenting that and logging that so that if somebody asks you a question, or when you're thinking about yourself, that you have those things that you can lean back on. Because I think we all tend to look at, like, what do we not have versus what do we have?
Well, I also think that if you're an achiever, in my experience, if you don't write it down, like for me, I look right past it. When it's done, it's off the list. Like, I do forget a lot. And I started to practice, unfortunately, not till about 10 years ago, where and I encourage my employees too, when they do something good, I'm like, write it, like, have your sheet, like what you're talking about. You just write down a note so you don't forget that you did something. Because there's a lot of things I think other people would say that you've done great, but you don't necessarily recognize it yourself. And I think that specifically happens a lot in women or heavy drivers, right? Because you're just on to the next task. Diedre, I want to reframe this question a little bit for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Because one of the stats that we had up there, I think it was from InfoSec or ISACA, which said that basically one of the biggest skill gaps in cyber is soft skills. Like, it's 32% is one of the things that was acknowledged as one of the big gaps for people in the cyber business. Knowing that there are a lot of people in technology, but I've been getting a lot of people asking me, how do you get into cyber? Would you mind maybe kind of addressing what some of the skills they might have coming out of technology and how they might be able to enter into the cyber world?
Yeah, I mean, the soft skills are plaguing us in all industries, the ability to have a conversation that's win-win, which is, we're on the same team, we're working on the same problems. How do we get a win? Know what is a win for me, as I should know what the win is for you. And then we work towards that. That whole concept is, when I got into the business, it was like, the first question was, is this person going to have to interact with humans? Like, literally placing software developers, IT. And that was a question on my job card. Fast forward, here we are today. It's like, all we're doing is interacting. Even if you're the most technical of technical, my most technical people, I'm still leveraging from a strategy perspective. I need to know what they think. And so it is causing harm for us for sure in cybersecurity, under where we're, there's a lot of being seen as a cost center. There's a lot of being seen as the no center. There's a lot of being seen as the what are you folks even do center. And so the way that we must come together is to get the dead horse here, but our roles and responsibilities clearly defined in an organization. And if so, then we will communicate better together. One of the biggest problems is people don't even really know what somebody else does. So, all of us taking, as Louisa was talking about, that self-reflection time. What do I do? How does it fit into not only my org, but into my, my specific profession in other organizations, so that I can, while I'm job searching, speak to how I can fit in and how I can help and what I can bring. And that really takes that retrospective time. And to your point, Sasha, it's like keeping your resume updated, not because you're job searching, but because we are doers and we accomplish things. And then now we've got new tasks and projects we're responsible for. And so instead of waiting until the job searching time and then trying to remember, again, in cyber, we've got that covered for you. You don't even have to think to make your resume. That being said, it's not that way everywhere else. And there's a lot of thinking. And so let's not make it harder for ourselves,
We do have a couple of, because we're getting against time, we do have a couple of notes there. And by the way, I will say one of the things I did in my last is I stopped making resumes, and I just did, if you think about like architects or artists have portfolios, if you think about that list as, hey, here's a portfolio of my projects and my experiences and responsibilities, highly recommend that, and just change the conversation, though it doesn't work when you're applying, is what I've learned.
Yeah.
But so we got a couple great questions. One from Jennifer, which is, in tech, how are career gaps viewed currently? And clearly she's meaning taking time off, right? If you're caring for kids or family, this type of things, burnout, just refocusing. What are your thoughts related to that? For somebody who's trying to re-enter, right?
So don't leave the gap on your resume. Put what you were doing when you were doing whatever you were doing. And any company that doesn't have respect for you raising children, caring for your parents, taking mental health time, who gives a shit? Like, that's great. At least they know, and you didn't waste your time talking to them. Leaving the gap with nothing there, the recruiters pass you by and put you on the bottom of the list all the time. Any recruiter, because there's just more people that don't have the gap. So I say, put what you were doing, show what you were doing, pull out things that relate to the work, make it interesting, so you're raising children while you're teaching them to follow rules, you're teaching them to follow organization, put it in there to the right people that you want to work for. It matters. To the rest, who cares? That's what I think.
Louisa?
I would agree. Yeah, I think it's much more accepted now for people to have gaps, and life happens, especially in the last couple of years. There's a lot of people that have chosen or been forced to take time off to do all of the things that are mentioned there. So I agree, and I agree that there's companies out there you don't want to work for, and if they don't see the value in you and the time off that you took to do things, and really that's family is most important. That's why most people, like, we're all here, right? We're trying to make money so we can live our life and support our family and all of that. So I totally agree with that. I think it's important and I would call it out, put it out there. And again, if they overlook you, then they're lost and you can move on and not waste any time.
That's great. Great advice. So this one I think is for you, Diedre, which is, what is the most valuable cyber certification? From Kristen's asking that.
All depends on the functional role. Happy to take questions offline from folks. I saw in the question that this person's getting their PMI. That is very valuable. Teams in cyber over the last 2 years have doubled or tripled in size for the first time. We're seeing that sort of growth, and project management is a big, sort of outcome of those jobs. But in terms of the certifications, there's, oh my gosh, I think we have we've organized the most popular ones. And if I remember correctly, it's almost 1,000. So, it really depends on out of the 45 functional roles, which one are we talking about? And then what level within those roles are you already at? So happy to help offline.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then also there's from Sandy, she asked, can you please discuss the impact of age as
Mm,
you make this decision to move on?
mm.
I
Yeah,
think it exists. I will
they-
tell you, I feel like it exists.
it
That's the
does.
conversation amongst my friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it mostly exists because the older we get, well, beyond unconscious bias, that again, if it's there, we don't want to work for that company anyways. If it's in the recruiting department, holy cow, that company is definitely not going to have a great future. And there's nothing we can do about that. Also, why it feels that way is that there's less positions for people. When we're older, we're taking higher seats. There's one manager to how many people on a team, one director, one VP, one, C-suite. And so it feels even worse job searching because of that. So yes, there's unconscious or conscious biases out there, and we don't want to work for those companies anyways. And it just feels worse because of how hard it is to search when we're more senior. I believe that, again, it's pound that pavement, don't settle, ask the questions, don't let them tell you they're rejecting you. You reject before when you know that if you want the job or not. That's my best advice today.
Louisa.
Yeah, I would concur. I would just also say, like, this is where consolidation of experience, I think, is important. And, if you're concerned about that, possibly remove some of the dates and just, speak to the experience that you have and the impacts that you've made on companies. And certainly there is ageism out there. Of course there is. There's all kinds of discriminations happening in the world. But I agree with Diedre that, there are a lot of companies out there that every single day are hiring people that have lots and lots of experience, and seeing great value in that. And there may be more rocks that you have to turn over to find that, but that's where I think networking is important too, and relationships, professional relationships, because there's a lot of companies that I think are certainly doing what's best for the company and doing what's best for applicants and hiring great people and with great experience. But it's there. I mean, it's the truth as well.
Yeah.
So we're up on our deadline. Pradeep, if you wouldn't mind posting the last slide real quick about upcoming events. I just want to thank you, ladies. You've been great. We have an assistant in Keon who's been in the chat making some comments and also putting some resources in there. So if you do want to connect in on anything, thank you, Keon, for doing that. We certainly appreciate it. But for those of you that are local, I just want to make sure that you're aware, SIM is we have a local Portland chapter, and we have a book club coming up on the 25th. If you are not in our book club or not, this is an amazing book, especially if you're an introvert like me. So we're reviewing Quiet. We also have our chapter meeting in November on the 9th. And then our lunch series next month, we're not going to do something remote. So for those of you who are local, we're going to have a happy hour here on the 16th with the location to be determined. But it'll be in the greater Portland area. And then we have our holiday celebration coming up in December for SIM. So again, Diedre and Louisa, thank you so much for your time and your insights. I am sure that they are open to connecting with you all on LinkedIn. And for any folks, it looks like we'll have a follow-up survey. Thank you, Jordan, for that reminder. We will have a follow-up survey. If you have topics or speakers that you would like us to feature, please let us know. But we really, really do appreciate your time from our experts and then everyone else's time that are always open to feedback. So thank you, ladies. Have a lovely day. I really appreciate your time. And I hope everyone makes it a great week. We're over, right? This is hump day, so keep going. We're over it.
Exactly.
Take care.
Sisterhood.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you all.
Bye, everybody.